Trust that you're enjoying looking through Ephesians together. My reading today is Ephesians 3 verse 7, which says, I became a servant of this gospel by the gift of God's grace given me through the working of his power. I just love Paul's attitude and humility there. Just reading a little bit from Keys to Deeper Life by Tozer, talking about Paul. He says, tens of thousands of believers who pride themselves on their understanding of Romans and Ephesians cannot conceal the sharp spiritual contradiction that exists between their hearts and the heart of Paul. Paul's spirit was that of the loving explorer. He was a prospector among the hills of God, searching for the gold of personal spiritual acquaintance, and so should we be as well. And I just love Paul's humility and attitude that comes through, that he says he's a servant of the gospel, and it's through the gift of God's grace working in him, through his God's power. So it's all about God, not about him, and I just love his humility and his attitude. I'm reminded of a few years ago being on a conference call with a few other folk, and Steve and Lorraine Thomas were sharing, and someone asked them about the churches that they oversee, and Lorraine very quickly and quietly said she thought of it in terms of the churches that they serve rather than the churches that they oversee. And I thought what a helpful attitude that is, and that's sort of humility, that sort of humble spirit and awareness of it's God's grace and power that Paul's referring to here. It's all about God rather than about him. Let's not fall into the trap of being too fascinated by people that God may be using, and overlook it. In fact, it's God's grace and it's God's power that's working in them. Let's not fall into a sort of green room Christianity way of thinking. Let's think in terms of it's simply humble people, hopefully, that God's using and gifting. It's his power working in them. Let's be grateful for that. It's all about God. We're just servants of his gospel, aren't we? Amen.